For the longest time, the rules of cybersecurity were pretty simple. Build a really strong wall, a digital fortress, and just keep the bad guys out. Well, you can pretty much tear up that old rulebook. The entire battlefield has completely changed, and the biggest threats? They're no longer trying to get past your walls. They're already inside.
And this quote, man, it just nails it. The very idea of a simple, defensible perimeter. It's gone. That whole idea is a relic of a simpler time, right? And honestly, clinging to it is probably one of the most dangerous things a modern business can do. So when we're talking about this new battlefield, what we're really talking about is the digital supply chain. And look, we're not just talking about the folks who deliver your physical goods. We're talking about every piece of software, every cloud service, every single partner you rely on to operate. This huge, tangled web is how business gets done today, and it's quietly become the #1 security blind spot for most companies. This right here is where the modern attack really begins.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to hammer home why that old perimeter idea is dead and gone. Then, we'll get into the jaw-dropping costs of these new attacks. After that, we pivot to the solution, what a new leadership playbook looks like, a 4-stage framework for defense, and finally, how you can actually turn this huge risk into a serious competitive advantage. Okay, let's dive into this first big idea, this fundamental shift in thinking. Businesses just aren't self-contained fortresses anymore. They're complex, interconnected ecosystems where the lines between inside and outside have basically vanished.
And here's the kicker. The whole attack surface has flipped on its head. See, attackers figured out it's way easier to hit one of your smaller, maybe less secure vendors, and then just use that trusted connection to waltz right into your network. So the threat isn't banging on the front door anymore, it's using a key you already handed out to a partner.
So what does this all mean in practice? Well, the stakes are just astronomical. Seriously, the numbers we're about to see paint a pretty terrifying picture of the damage these attacks are causing right now.
Just let this number sink in for a second. $60 billion. That's the projected annual cost of these attacks by 2025. And look, we're not talking about some far-off sci-fi future. This is practically tomorrow. It's a financial crisis that is growing exponentially and hitting businesses hard right now.
Okay, so that's the big picture. But what about a single event? The damage is just staggering. Globally, the average cost of a data breach is over $4 million. But here's what should really make you sit up straight. In the US, that number more than doubles to over $10 million. Yeah, $10 million. That makes the US far and away the most expensive place on earth to have a data breach.
And here's where it all connects back to the supply chain. Almost a third of those incredibly expensive breaches, they're coming from a third party. So a huge and growing chunk of that massive financial pain is coming directly from your digital supply chain.
So you might be asking, why is this happening so fast? It's because the very building blocks of modern software are being poisoned. We're seeing a 1,300%, that's not a typo, a 1,300% explosion in malicious code being slipped into open source libraries. Think about that. It's like finding out the concrete you're using to build a skyscraper is being deliberately mixed with sand from the inside out.
And who's at the top of this food chain? What's the apex predator here? It's ransomware, and it's gotten smarter. Attackers don't even have to hit you directly anymore. They just have to hit one of your critical suppliers, hold them hostage, and then just sit back and watch the chaos cascade right down to you, crippling your operations.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's big, it's expensive, and it's super complex. So how do we possibly fix this? Well, the answer isn't just buying another shiny security tool. It's a whole new approach to leadership. This has to be treated as a core business strategy problem, and it demands a united front from the entire C-suite.
Yeah, this can't just be the IT department's problem anymore. It's got to be a team effort. The CIO has to lead the charge on something called zero trust architecture, which basically means never trust, always verify for every single connection. Meanwhile, the CFO needs to start putting actual dollar signs on this risk, making it a real part of financial planning. And the chief supply chain officer, they have to bake security into the procurement process from day one, making it a deal breaker for any new partner.
All right, so how do you take that high-level strategy and actually put it into practice? You do it with a practical, 4-stage framework for managing risk. And this isn't some project you do once. It's a living, breathing process for every single partner you work with.
It really breaks down into 4 key stages. First, you have to find and classify every vendor based on how risky they are. Second, you assess them with some serious due diligence. Third, you get your security requirements into a legally binding contract. And finally, you monitor them constantly and have a safe way to end the relationship. And remember, this is a circle. It's a continuous loop, not a one-and-done checklist.
And let's be clear, that second stage, the assessment, is absolutely critical. The old way of just, sending out a questionnaire and hoping they're telling the truth, that's completely broken. The new way is all about evidence. It's show me, don't tell me. You demand proof, like a SOC 2 audit report, and you use tools to constantly scan their defenses from the outside. You trust, but you always verify.
And you know what? Your most powerful weapon in all of this is your contract. It has to include some non-negotiable clauses. You absolutely need the right to audit them. You need a super strict window, like 24 to 48 hours, for them to tell you if they've been breached. And you need something called a software bill of materials. Think of it like an ingredients list for their code, so you know exactly what you're running. And finally, you need crystal clear terms on who is liable for what.
Okay, so that's for all your partners. But what about the stuff that's truly core to your business, your secret sauce? For those things, just managing third-party risk might not be enough. The ultimate play is to just eliminate that risk altogether by taking back control and building your own defensible digital core. And really, the strategic choice boils down to this. Off-the-shelf software is convenient, sure, but you're basically living in their apartment building. You're on their schedule for security patches, and they ultimately hold the keys to your data. A custom, secure-by-design solution, that's building your own house. You're in a dedicated space, you control the security, and you have total ownership of your most critical data. You're essentially trading some convenience for a whole lot of control. And the way you do this is with a mindset called DevSecOps. All it really means is that you're building security in from the very first line of code instead of trying to slap it on at the end like an afterthought. And when you do that, your most important software goes from being a potential liability to being a hardened, defensible asset. So I want to leave you with this final thought. We started this whole conversation talking about the supply chain as your biggest weakness, right? Your weakest link. But what happens if you actually get this right? What if you build a truly secure, resilient ecosystem? In a world where trust is basically the new currency, turning that weakness into a real, provable strength, well, that's not just good defense, that's a massive competitive advantage.